You're listening to Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance, Protecting Texas Churches. The show that gives pastors and church leaders the clarity they need to protect their people, property, and ministry.
Welcome back to Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance, Protecting Texas Churches. I'm your host, Ron Wadley with Insurance for Texans. We help church leaders to protect their people and property with wisdom and clarity. Today, we are going to talk about minimum deductibles for Texas church insurance. A few weeks ago, we got a call from a large church in Fort Worth. They weren't shopping out of desperation. They were being proactive. Their church had multiple large buildings, and like most Texas churches, their property insurance premiums had climbed year after year. They had finally found what looked like a good solution: a risk purchasing group, better pricing, solid building limits, fewer headaches. At least that's what it looked like at first. Then they slowed down and read the details. What they saw was that their wind and hail deductible was 5% of the total property value. This gave the church leaders pause. This church had more than $40 million in property coverage. A 5% deductible meant they would need to come up with $2 million out of pocket before insurance paid a single dollar on a hail claim. Suddenly, what seemed like a great deal at first wasn't turning out to be so great, and they aren't the only ones facing this issue. One of the biggest changes Texas churches are facing right now isn't just higher premiums, it's higher deductibles, especially for wind and hail. Storms in Texas aren't rare events, they're expected. Insurance companies know that. After years of massive losses, carriers have shifted how they manage risk. One of the main tools they use is deductibles. In high-risk areas like North Texas, insurance deductibles have crept up. What used to be 1 or 2% is now often 3, 5, or even higher. And in many cases, those deductibles aren't negotiable. Risk purchasing groups like the one this Fort Worth church was considering are designed for catastrophic losses. They are not built to handle frequent smaller claims. To keep pricing down, they push more of the initial risk back onto the church through larger deductibles. That's the trade-off. Lower premiums, higher out-of-pocket exposure. For churches that don't understand what that means, the first storm can be financially devastating. The Fort Worth church asked the right question. Is there a minimum deductible for Texas church insurance? The honest answer is yes, often there is. And once it's set by the carrier, you usually can't buy your way out of it. But that's not the end of the story. This is where deductible buydown policies come into play. A deductible buydown is a separate policy that specifically targets a risk like hail. It takes a large deductible, say 5%, and reduces the church's actual out-of-pocket exposure to something more manageable, like 2%. In practice, that means the church keeps the lower premium from the main policy while shifting part of the deductible risk to another insurer. It's not free, but it can dramatically reduce a financial shock after a major storm. The Fort Worth church learned that pairing a risk purchasing group policy with a deductible buydown gave them balance. Lower premiums without betting the entire building fund on the next hailstorm. They also learned something else about insurance. Insurance is meant for big problems, not small fixes. Churches with low deductibles tend to file more claims. Over time, that hurts them. Insurance companies track claim frequency closely. Too many small claims can lead to higher premiums, tighter terms, or non-renewal down the road. This is where the Fort Worth church made a stewardship decision. They created a plan to handle minor repairs internally and reserve insurance for truly significant losses. That approach protected their long-term insurability and stabilized their costs. None of this is intuitive. None of it shows up clearly on a quote summary. That's why working with a church insurance specialist matters. When this Fort Worth church sat down with our team at Insurance for Texans, the confusion cleared. They understood what the deductible meant, what options existed, and how to structure coverage that aligned with their financial reality. That's the heart of true Texas church insurance, not just finding coverage, but helping church leaders understand the consequences of each decision before a storm makes the choice for them. If your church is facing rising deductibles, unfamiliar policy terms, or considering a risk purchasing group, don't navigate it alone. Contact our church insurance team at insurancefortexans.com. And if you would like a more general overview of church insurance, get a copy of our book, The Promise of Certainty, at thepromiseofcertainty.com. I'm Ron Wadley, and this has been Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance, Protecting Texas Churches. Until next time, remember, church insurance requires expertise.
Thanks for listening to Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance. Until next time, remember, insurance isn't just about policies. It's about safeguarding the mission God has called you to lead.